Hi, I'm Alex Paulton. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Today, I am very pleased to have a dear friend of mine who I've known for years and years and years and years and years, but he's an avid watch collector, and I finally talked him into coming onto the show, and that's my good friend, Alex Lidow. Hi, Alex. Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
thank you.
Well, watch collecting is a journey. It's a passion. It's a hobby. Well, any good hobby is all of those things. And the first thing I'd want to ask you is what got you started on this journey of watch collecting? How did you become a watch collector?
It started in actually April 1986, and I was in Singapore. I was there on business, and I had some extra time. One evening, I was walking around, and I saw an old watch shop that had old watches, and in the window they had an Omega triple date moon phase, and it looked beautiful. And as a matter of fact, it was in the original box. From 1954, which was my year of birth. And something just struck me like a shiver up my back. And I said, I really had to have that. I just wanted that thing. It just looked so beautiful. And for the next couple of days, I negotiated. I wasn't a good negotiator on watches because he knew I wanted it so badly. So I did buy it eventually. And that started me on a collection of complications. I enjoyed the idea of a complication. The movements were all very precise. It meant a lot of engineering, and so I started looking for good complications.
Well, you're an electronic engineer yourself, right?
Yes.
So it resonated with you on a certain level, I imagine.
It resonated, which is ironic since mechanical watches are not resonant. But yes, it did resonate. And I also had, my grandfather had just passed away, and he left me his gold Accutron astronaut watch, which I still have, of course. And that was a precious thing for me. But the mechanical complications sort of stole my heart there.
There you well, I'm wearing an Accutron, not an astronaut. Actually, I envy you for your astronaut. That watch has got a tremendous amount of horological and aeronautical history, you know.
Yeah.
But now you sent me some pictures of some universal Geneves, and I'll put them on the screen for the audience. But you could talk about the moon phase first. I see one has a moon phase. The one you're
There you go.
wearing.
There you go. That one.
That's a beautiful piece, my friend. That is a really beautiful piece. Tell me about that piece.
Yeah, so it's a universal Geneve. They made their own movement. It's a triple date moon phase chronograph, and it was built in the early 50s. This one has a gold case, and it's has all original on it. It keeps pretty good time. I've had many universal Geneves over the years, and I find them to be pretty delicate watches. They require a lot of maintenance. They tend to jam, between changes of date or whatever it is, and that's a watchmaker visit. But they're all very, very beautiful watches. This is from the 50s. I've had some of the more recent ones, although now I've sold all of them. I also have another unique one. I sent you a picture of it,
Yes.
which has two dials on it, and two different movements in it actually for keeping time in multiple time zones. So that was I'll say an aside. I For complications, I enjoyed the early Movados. I actually have a triple date moon phase Movado that is it's a from the 30s, and it's a uh, uh, it's just a beautiful rectangular watch that is Art Deco. I've had many Movados, also triple date moon phases, as recently as the 80s, mechanical ones, and they all have very good movements, I must say.
What did
Uh,
you think? What do you think happened to Movado?
It's like a lot of the watches, they became, sort of mid-market and generic with the influx of quartz watches. Very few were able to maintain their distinction. A few have reemerged as jewelry, using the standard Valjoux movement. A few maintain their own proprietary movements, Rolex being probably the best example of it. But now it's a piece of jewelry with a generic movement in it, and that's not so interesting to me.
No, it's not. But tell me a little bit more about Universal Geneve. I understand you even had a more intimate relationship with the company at one point.
Well, not really with the company. I had in later years, and when I say later years, I'm talking the 90s. I met a gentleman by the name of Oscar Walden, and Oscar worked at Tissot, and I found out that in the early 50s he actually designed the Tissot movement. He was an engineer, and he moved from there to Universal Genève, where he was both a watch engineer and then went into sales and marketing after that. And in his later years, and he just died a few years ago, in his late 90s. In his later years, he actually started creating his own watches for companies like Tiffany and Cartier. And so a lot of the Tiffany and Cartier watches are actually his creation, and he just put a Tiffany or Cartier face on it and a case to their specifications. And I have several of his watches. He actually had his own brand called Walden International, and he would do things like buy old cases of movements and put them into his own case. For example, he found a whole case of cricket alarm watches, and so he built
Volcanoes, yeah.
Vulcan cricket, and he built 2,000 of those, and very fine ones. I actually have Vulcan crickets, and it's a wonderful movement. And his was the original movement put into a new case. Same thing with Zenith Primeras. He bought a whole case of Primera movements that he got, I don't know how, but put together very fine Zenith, triple date moon phase Primeras, which I have as well. I think I sent you even a photo of that.
Well, we'll
So
make sure to get those pictures. I have a couple here, but we'll get them all up.
yeah, and he put together a bunch of watches with Valjoux movements and beautiful watches. Gold case, platinum case. I have several of them, and they were all, much lower price if you bought them directly from him. So, and they've all proved to be excellent watches.
Very cool. So, you had mentioned something about the company itself, though, business-wise.
No, I think you're thinking about the Russian company Poljot or
That's right.
Pilot.
You were telling me a story
Yeah,
once about them.
yeah.
Tell us about Poljot. Tell us about your relationship with Pol, because you speak Russian, right?
Yeah. So, but my father was born in Russia, and he and I used to love to travel together. And we, I think maybe the mid 90s, early 90s or something, we were traveling through Russia, and it was shortly after the Soviet Union collapsed, and there were all these watches, mechanical watches. So this is, say circa 1993. Imagine, these stores that are filled with mechanical watches of all different varieties, and they're all made in Russia. And most of them are crap. They're just bad. Um, and they were all copies of something or other. So my father bought a bunch of them. He just, I don't know, 30, 40, something like that. We got stopped at the border because they thought we were, smuggling watches. But
Dealers.
yeah, dealers. But he just is, and I, of course, bought a bunch of them as well. So together we had just a ton of these Russian watches. And they were flawed, but they weren't that flawed, and it was kind of interesting. So we started investigating whether or not we could buy the company, and the company was almost bankrupt at this point. The Soviet Union was sort of collapsed, and nobody in the ex-Soviet republics wanted to buy anything that was made prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union, because it was all crap.
Exactly. Well, think the
So
Trabant, right? Yeah.
yeah, and but some of these were, obviously very unusual watches, and they had these calendar functions that were, these analog calendars that you could, scroll and see what day of the week it would be, and all this kind of very strange stuff, and and they would usually work for a while, and then they would stop working, and you'd have to have them fixed, or you'd throw it away, frankly. But so we investigated buying the company, and actually came to the point of making an offer when we received a I don't know, I'll say communication from a colleague of ours that said, back away, and back away quickly. uh, and we're not in the watch business, so when you get those kind of indications, you do. And the reason was because there was I'll say a gangster element that was buying the company.
There are
That
threads
I
of
think,
that throughout Russian business, right?
yeah,
Sadly.
yeah, unfortunately. So I don't even know what happened. I know the company still exists, and they still make watches, but we quickly ran from that one.
So, what would you say is the one that got away? The watch that you really wanted but never could get your hands on?
I think that there are a couple of them. I always wanted one of the 1950s triple date moon phase Rolexes. They're they're gorgeous watches. It's a fabulous, unique movement, and I was really never able to afford one or find one when I could afford it, and then not be able to afford it again when I found it. But so those have been pretty expensive watches, but beautiful watches.
Very
That
cool.
that I think was the one that I wish that I'd had.
Well, it's a beautiful watch to have, if I may say so
Yeah.
myself. And what about the watch, the best, the nicest and or best watch you've ever owned in your collection?
Well, my I'll say my emotional favorites are the Jaeger LeCoultres, the Reversos. I have a few of those, and I just love that whole the look, the format. The Reverso is a bit of a gimmick, but it's a fun gimmick.
First sports watch,
Yeah,
right?
there
It was
you
for
go.
polo, right? Because he to protect the watch to playing polo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I always thought they were the most beautiful watches.
Very cool. So, hey, Alex, thank you so much for talking to us about watches. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially knowing that you are actually quite a busy man in your daily life.
Thanks, Alex. I love talking about it, and I always love talking to you. So it's a win-win.
There you go. And I know our audience got something out of it. I mean, you told us some very interesting stories. Thanks a lot, Alex.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And I want to thank all of you out there for taking the time to watch. Please subscribe. Have a great one.